2024. So today I'm very honored to be here to present about my graduation thesis on the student perceptions of peer feedback using Google Docs in online translation course under the supervision of Mrs. Jung Deep. And in this presentation, I would like to mention 6 main parts of my study. The first one is the background of the study. The next one is the research aims and the question. The third part is the research methodology. The fourth part is the research. I'm so sorry. So the third part is the literature review. The fourth part is the research findings and methodology. The part number 5 is the research findings and discussion, and the last one is the conclusion of this study. So to explain the reason why I choose this topic, I would like to come into the background of the study. Firstly, I would like to talk about the importance of peer feedback. So a lot of studies have been conducted on the use of peer feedback in EFL learning and teaching, especially in the writing classes. And peer feedback has been found to have an effective impact on the student writing skills and also their writing performance. So in the translation context, the peer feedback has been found to improve the student translation skill, and also it serves as a collaborative learning activity according to lvtn 2001. And secondly is the use of Google Docs. So because of the bad influences of COVID-19 on the field of education, the online teaching and learning is widely used in the EFL classes. So that, and among the famous and popular platforms to implement this effect is Google Docs. Some studies have reviewed the success of peer feedback in writing classroom on Google Docs, such as the study of Yan et al. 2006, the study of Diab 2011, and the study of Wing and Chen 2021. However, little research has been found on the integration of feedback and Google Docs in advanced translation classroom. Therefore, the study aimed to investigate the student perceptions of peer feedback using Google Docs in an advanced translation classroom of the Canton University, Vietnam. Next part is the research aims and the research question. This study aims to investigate the 2 aspects. The first one is to investigate the students' perceptions of the advantages and disadvantages of peer feedback using Google Docs in online translation class. And the second aspect is to investigate the students' perceptions, the student preferences of Google Docs, of peer feedback using Google Docs in translation classroom. And the research question of the study is that what are the student perceptions of peer feedback using Google Docs in translation lessons? With regard to the literature review, I would like to mention the 5 parts in this sections. The first one is the definition of key terms, where in which I has drawn my own definition for peer feedback and translation for this study. Peer feedback was discussed in part 2 and part 3 in the EFL learning and in translation respectively. And to the collaborative learning activity, I divided into 2 parts, part 4 and part 5. Particularly is collaborative learning via Google Docs in the EFL context and in the translation context, respectively. Now let's come to the research methodology. This study used the descriptive quantitative research design with the questionnaire as an instrument. This questionnaire includes the 2 main parts. The first part is the personal information of the participants, and the second part is the questionnaire, which includes the 18 items of the Likert scale and the three open-ended questions, allowing each cluster. The fourth part is the research methodology. Next is the participants. The participants of the study were 60 English major students of the School of Foreign Languages at the university. They completed an advanced translation course using Google Docs. That course name Translation 3, Advanced Translation 1. And this is a procedure of data collection. The first step is to design a questionnaire. The second step is to pilot the questionnaire. The third step is to conduct the questionnaire, and the final is to analyze the questionnaire on SPSS 22. Now let's come to the findings and discussion of this study. So the table here shows the mean score of the three clusters. Number one is the student perceptions of the advantages of peer feedback using Google Docs with the mean score of 4.22, indicating that the student strongly agree on the advantages of peer feedback using Google Docs. The second cluster is the student perceptions of the disadvantages of peer feedback using Google Docs with the mean score 2.91, indicating that the students stay neutral on this cluster. And the final cluster is the student preferences of peer feedback using Google Docs with a mean score of 3.98, indicates that students show their preferences of this learning method in the translation classroom. So to the first findings about the student perceptions of the advantages of peer feedback using Google Docs. This study have highlighted that peer feedback help the student in improving their hard skill and the soft skill. The hard skill here is the translation skill, and the soft skill include the critical thinking and the collaborations. So these findings is similar to that of some studies such as One in Hand 2013, Linet on 2021, and Mohammed 2021. So One in Hand states that peer feedback can help the student improve their translation performance. Moreover, Linet on 2021 also highlight that peer feedback can improve their translation quality. And Mohammed 2021 found that peer feedback can help them improve the critical thinking because they have to think whether they will correct the translation to the peers' comments or not. And I think this one is the most interesting findings of my study. That's the students encountered the issues when implementing the peer feedback using Google Docs. So the students stay neutral in other disadvantages, such as the fear of causing conflicts among their peers, or the difficulties in giving peer feedback because of the constraint of vocabulary and grammar. However, one disadvantage has been found is that the student encountered the technical issues, including the slow speeding Google Docs when there were a lot of users at the same time on the same text, and the weak internet connection when they use the Google Docs. So this finding is contrary to the finding of the Sudrajat and Puravarman 2019, because in his study he found out that 76% of the students believe that they did not have any problems using Google Docs. To the third part is the student perceptions of the preferences of peer feedback using Google Docs. And the student agree on the reason why they like using peer feedback on Google Docs. The first one is that it helped them to revise the translation according to what their peer have commented on their translation mistake. And this finding is similar to the finding of Sujana and Sudrajat and Puravarman 2021. And the students like peer feedback because it helped them to engage. It helped them to engage more actively in the class, in the translation class. And this finding is in line with that of Ali 2021 and Mohammed 2021. One outstanding finding is that the students feel less stressed when they receive peer feedback rather than when they receive the teacher feedback. And this could be explained that when they receive peer feedback, they receive from the ones that were at the same level with them and have the better understanding of their translation. However, the student also reported to be suspicious of peer feedback because they thought that peer feedback sometimes is not as reliable as the teacher feedback. So that peer feedback and teacher feedback should be practiced together, like Hansen and Liu 2005 have mentioned in their study. Now let's come into the conclusion. This study has drawn two conclusions. The first one is that peer feedback using Google Docs was a beneficial learning method in the translation classroom. And the second conclusion was that the students showed a strong preference to this learning method. And through the findings of this study, I have drawn some implication for the student, for the teacher, and for the administrator. Firstly, for the student, they have to take the feedback very serious. It means that when they give feedback, they have to give the constructive ones, and because of the disadvantages found in the study, they have to work in a place that has good internet connections. And for the teacher should give the instruction on how to give proper feedback before starting using it in the translation classroom, so that the student can know how to give the constructive feedback. And moreover, they should also use the teacher feedback in line along with the peer feedback in the classroom. For the university administrator, they should provide the chance for the teacher to attend some training courses and workshops that is related to the Google Docs or the use of peer feedback in the translation classroom, so that they can apply, so that the teacher can apply this learning method in their classes. This study also has some limitation. The first limitation is that is about the time, because this study only conducted the survey in only one translation course. And the next limitation is about the small participants. Only 60 participants took part in this study. And the third one is that this study could not examine to what extent the students' translation improved, because this study used the quantitative research design. And from these limitations, some recommendations are made. Our future study can conduct the survey in various translation courses, like the technical translation or the environmental translation. And further study can include a larger number of participants. And there is a need to implement an experimental research to examine to what extent the student translation has been improved after using Google Doc, after using peer feedback in the translation classroom. And that's all for my thesis. And thank you very much for your attention. And all your comments for better thesis are welcome. Thank you so much.
Hello. I'm curious about how to use Google Docs to see the peer review.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're gonna know the the process, right? So
Yeah.
in that translation code, Mr. Him asked to post the divided into the groups, and then one group will post one group will
A file
post
in Google Docs.
the translation in Google Docs, and then in that table it had like a column for the comments from other groups.
Ah.
Yeah, and then they post the peer feedback there, and then in the group we will discuss about the peer feedback and also the translation.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So it took place in the semester in the first semester of last year.
Sorry. So at that time, Google Doc is a mean of communication. It has no function of helping you to do translation or getting peer feedback. It is just like Zalo. It's a tool to oh my God. I imagine in my mind when I see your topics is that you have the translation there, and there's some function that when I am the peer can go there to do something with it, and you can see that as a feedback or yeah, and then and now you have a column with the translation, and you can modify in the next one, right?
Yeah, that's it.
This is the way to use. Okay,
Yes.
thank you for that. Next, do you study about collaborative learning in your research?
Yeah, I have.
You do?
Yeah,
In
because
your
I have.
title? Something in your title or in your questions?
No.
No? Okay, so,
Because peer feedback can serve as a collaborative activity.
but do you study about that?
Uh,
Do you study about peer feedback and its relation to collaborative learning?
no.
Yes or no? No. Okay? So we need to remove it. You have many pages about that. 10, 11, 12, 13. So you review many things about collaborative learning in translation, but you don't study about that. You study about the perception, right?
Yes.
About peer feedback. So it's not something related to collaborative learning, for sure. You don't need that, okay? Research design. We don't need to explain different kinds of design because we know that. You just need to tell people, okay, in my study, I design this study like this, because of that. That's done. We don't need, okay, in the words, when we want to study, we need to think of blah, blah, blah. No, we don't need that. Okay? All the numbers, when it is at the beginning of the sentence, write it in words. Like 17 something, 43 something. Okay? Student without the in all cases.
Without
The student, no, students. Okay. Okay. Now, question. Do you have qualitative data from your questionnaires or not?
I have just 3 open-ended questions, and I also
Yes. You have data.
mentioned them. And yeah.
Yes, and do you have data?
Yes, I do.
Where is that?
Can you look at page 20? For example, page 21.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the second paragraph, I analyzed the data from the open-ended question.
What kinds of methods do you use to analyze these kind of data?
So I read all of these answers, and then I
Explain
group, I
that,
group
not
them.
to me, I understand.
Yeah.
Explain that in your research methodology.
Oh, yes.
You don't have that.
All right. Thank you
So
so much.
when I ask you a question, it's not mean to ask you because I know how to do it.
Yeah.
I just need you to add more details about that, okay?
So can I ask, Rick? I will put it in the
In
data.
methodology,
Yeah, in data
in chapter
analysis.
3.
Yeah, okay.
Data analysis. So you tell people how many words or how much ideas, how many ideas do you have? Okay, how many pages of data? And then you tell people how you read that, analyze that, in what kind of teams and how do you use it. And then you attach that to the end of your thesis too. Next, 22, page 22. I think you need to modify this too. From question 8 to 13. This is a negative, right? Because you asked about the disadvantages, right? And if you want to analyze something in the same questionnaire, that you have the first section is positive, the last section is positive, and the middle is a negative. You need to do a reverse version. What does it mean over here? It's me. Question number 8, for example. Peer feedback using Google Docs cause conflicts between me and my peers, right? So many of your friends will mock one, right? But in a positive way, it means that they disagree with this idea, right?
Yes.
It means 5 in statistics. So these questions need a reverse action in your data when you do statistics. So if you don't understand, I speak in Vietnamese.
Reverse input.
Tức là khi mà mình chạy dữ liệu của SPSS xem phân tích những cái bảng one sample t-test hay là reliability score đó, thì cái bảng câu hỏi em có xuất hiện 6 câu này là nó hỏi ngược lại với tổng số câu còn lại, tức là giá trị của một câu trả lời đang là số 1 có nghĩa là số 5, số 4 có nghĩa là số 2, số 3 thì giữ nguyên. Vậy thì em phải điều chỉnh cái thông số dữ liệu khi em nhập SPSS lại. Và đối với 6 câu này nè thì em nhập là 1 thì thành 5, 2 thì thành 4. Lúc đó em mới chạy lại, em mới ra lại cái reliability score lại, và em mới chạy cái mean này kia các thứ lại, bởi vì cái này là dữ liệu ngược, em hỏi ngược mà, em hiểu không? So với tổng thể em đâu có lấy gì, nó sẽ là giảm độ tin cậy của em xuống, hiểu không? Cái ý người ta điểm rất là cao, tại vì em sẽ không giải thích được lý do tại sao cái phần số 1 của em thì đang là 4 chấm mấy không, là phần số 3 4 chấm mấy, tự nhiên phần số 2 còn 2 chấm mấy. Mà trong một cái như vậy thì nó không logic, nên là em phải điều chỉnh cái này. So over here I want to mean that when you do SPSS, you need to kind of fix the data before you run the test. If not, the values can be different from your estimation. Okay? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. Thank you.
And when you explain about question number 20, I refer peer feedback to teacher feedback, right? So that has the number of mean with 3.38, right?
Yes.
And when you explain to me during your presentation, this is something different. And students tend to prefer one thing than the other. But over here, the mean,
It's neutral.
yeah, neutral, doesn't mean anything. Okay. So you have to explain that too if you want to use. And over to the page 29, right? You see 29? You have one drawback that you mentioned over here. It's a technical problem, right? But actually when you do with Google Docs, that is not only the only one problem with the technical, because you can do whatever you want. You can do it at any time with your phone, your laptop, with your friends. Okay? So think about that, because this related to your implication. Over here, you see that you trying to mention about the feedback time. You need the teacher to give you proper, or student need to learn how to give proper feedback, etc., material, useful things, and that doesn't relate to the drawbacks at all. You see, because you give recommendation or indication. Usually it related is or they are related to your study, right? You found something that are not good yet, so you need to suggest them to improve. So you have only one problem to improve, the technical problem, right? And then you suggest different things. You see what I mean over here? Clear? Okay. And I think at the end for the references, it looks fine, but if you can do APA 7, that will be better. APA 7. That is 6. That is 6. Yeah. And then the data about the statistics and qualitative, etc. You add it to this one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your suggestions and your advice, Mr. Kevin.
So let's start from his house, please.
Okay. Morning, Ray. It's good to see you again after like 2 years. Yeah. Okay. I have a few questions and some recommendations for revision. The questions first, and I'm going to read the question one by one, and I will listen to your answer to them one by one. Question number 1. In your literature review, you included section 2.2, which is about peer feedback in writing class. Why is that? So your thesis is about peer feedback on in translation, not in writing. So why did you include peer feedback in writing in the literature review? Why is that? If it is not necessary, it is not relevant, you might want to remove it. Okay, so can you explain why you include that?
Yeah. So I included the peer feedback in writing because I want to highlight the importance of peer feedback in translation. Because when I found about a peer feedback, it's like the dominant number of the study is about the peer feedback in writing. And
But is it relevant to your thesis? The literature review on peer feedback in writing and peer feedback in translation, are they relevant?
So writing and translation is also the aspect of the ESL learning and teaching. So that I would like to mention like the wider one and then go to my study.
So why not include it? Why not including peer feedback in speaking as well? Okay, think about that. I feel that the literature review on peer feedback in writing is not very relevant to your thesis. Question number 2. I'm wondering how you administer section 2.2. Section 2.2 in chapter 2.
Đổi rồi Hồng ơi. Mày không máy à?
Mình dùng là còn nói tiếng.
It is in EFL learning, but basically the whole thing is about writing.
Yeah.
And question number 2, I'm wondering how you administered the questionnaire. Could you explain? How did you collect the data?
So the statement in the questionnaire, I I draw on the I based on the previous study, and
How did you administer? How did you send the questionnaire?
I applied into the Google form, and then I contact the participant through Zello.
How did you contact the participants?
I send them a message on Zello.
Okay. So you send a message to the Yellow group.
I send one by one participant by message.
So you know the participant.
Yeah, because I know all of them because when I studied the history, I was like the head, like the leader of the class, so I know all of the participants.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
those 60 participants are in the same class.
No, so in that school there were 2 classes.
So you know all of them,
Yeah,
and you sent how many of them in total?
in total like 41 and 81
81
students.
And you sent the questionnaire to 60 of them.
No, I sent to like most all of them, but I just received a 60 replies.
Okay, so say that in your thesis.
Explain
So
that.
explain how the questionnaire was administered. You send the questionnaire link to each student in those 2 classes, and you were able to collect only 60 of them. Okay? So you invite them kind of personally. So you have to say that in your thesis. Question 3. In your finding, some students said that they preferred offline class. What do you think about this finding as a researcher? Can you give an explanation of why these students preferred offline class?
When using the Google Docs, it's constrained about the space, so that it's not useful when you use your speech to explain the reason why you correct that mistake, or you find out that it's not proper in the translation. So if like when I talk to you like this, I can explain clearly the reason why I see it as a mistake, and I can explain the reason why I correct it in the way I do.
So when the participants were giving their feedback, they were just writing down the comments.
Yes.
They were not online at the same time. They were not talking.
No, they will the teacher asked the student to post the feedback before the class took place. So
Yes. So they were not doing the feedback at the same time. Okay, I see. So you have to say that in the methodology. So we don't know the methodology. And the next question number 4. Do you know about the e-learning system of Calcutta University?
yes,
The LMS system?
I use it in the environmental translation course.
Really? You do? But okay. So in your study, you found out that there are some disadvantages to using Google Docs to give feedback due to the low internet connection and etc. Can you think of, as a researcher, can you suggest the use of LMS system? It is an online platform, and it is a learning management system. It is better than Google Docs. Would you think about using a different alternative platform for students to give feedback? Because if you give feedback on the Google Docs, it's not like very official. But if you use the e-learning system of the university, then people feel more obliged to do that because it's official and it's archived in the system.
Yeah. So the reason why I choose Google Docs because in the course translation 3, Mr. He used this platform and asked her to use this platform to use. And I know the e-learning, but actually I haven't used it to give peer feedback or something like that. I just use it to submit my assignment. So that I think it's kind of a good way to make another research on it. But actually, because I haven't used it, so that I can't figure it out. Yeah.
Fair enough, you don't know. Okay, so those are the 4 questions I want to clarify for you.
Yes, thank you.
Now, some of the suggestions for better thesis quality. Oh no, just one more question. In the indications, you were saying that peer feedback using Google Docs in an online translation course is good. How about an offline translation course? Because we do not have COVID-19 all the time. So we do not use Google Docs all the time, right? So how about giving feedback face to face?
So I think giving feedback face to face is another aspect to study. So
Because we do not have online classes all the time, right?
yeah.
Because in your thesis, in your title, you say online translation course. Because this is an online translation course, so your teacher used Google Docs for you to give feedback. But how about an offline translation course? Will you use Google Docs as well?
I think it can be used, but it's not for the whole course. They can use and integrate both the peer feedback on Google Docs and the oral peer feedback like this.
Yeah, well actually when I first read your thesis, I thought the feedback was given online. But no, it was not. Well, if it was given online, it means everyone was at the same time, doing it at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe you misunderstood like this study. So, and
So
in the first,
Hold on. So your participants gave feedback at the same time, all together at the same time.
Yes.
Synchronous.
yes,
Not
that's it.
synchronously.
Yeah, one the group that translated the
Before
text
class.
posted, yeah, and before the classroom, take
Before
place on Google Meet. The classroom took place on Google Meet because the last semester we learned the whole course online.
And your teacher was there while you were giving feedback or not?
Not. He was just in the Google Meet class, not on the Google Docs when we gave peer feedback.
Okay. And so the peer feedback was done after class or before class, not during class.
Not during the class. Before the class we post it, and then when the class took place, the teacher will read and then comments or something.
Okay, so it's not an online translation course. It's just a translation course. Because you can do Google Docs feedback when you are taking an offline course as well, right? Right? It doesn't need to be an online translation course to use Google Docs to give feedback. So think about your title. Yeah? Think back at your time on your title. You might not use it online. It gives people an impression that everything is done online at the same time. Yeah? Okay. So that's all the questions. Now the suggestions. In chapter 3, can you provide research context? Because I don't see the research context in there. So you might want to talk about it on page 15.
Because I integrated into the participants part.
Yeah, somewhere. So you have to put it in the correct column or correct section. Somewhere you put it in the participant, just a little bit, but that's not enough. So in the research context, I suggest you talk about the nature of feedback and how it is implemented at Cần Thơ University. And you talk about the online class by free choice or by COVID-19. Em nhớ là học kỳ rồi á, chúng ta vẫn học trực tiếp chứ không phải là học gián tiếp, vẫn học trực tiếp. Tình hình Covid vẫn cho phép chúng ta học trực tiếp, nhưng vì thầy cô các em và các em chọn lựa học online, cho nên chỗ này em phải giải thích cho kỹ cái research context. Em nói rằng là do Covid cho nên đã học online là không đúng. Tình hình Covid lúc đó là đã kiểm soát được.
Học kỳ trước nữa.
Trước nữa rồi, học kỳ trước nữa.
Năm học kỳ 1 của năm trước luôn đó cô.
Là học participation này là của năm trước hay là của kỳ này?
Đây là mấy bạn tham gia khóa học.
À, là học trước, ok. Như vậy thì em phải nói rõ
Giải thích
là
rõ đi.
online á, là do free choice hay là by COVID-19. Trong cái bối cảnh nghiên cứu á, em cần có 2 thông 4 thông tin sau đây. Một là the nature of the feedback, how was it implemented. Hai là cái lớp em học là online là due to cái gì, cái bối cảnh đó nha. Rồi em nói là em dịch articles đúng không? Thì article gì, nội dung gì, topic gì, phải giải thích rõ ra để người ta hình dung được cái bối cảnh nghiên cứu. Rồi cái teaching time, cái teaching schedule của cái lớp đó là như thế nào, học một tuần bao nhiêu buổi, bao nhiêu tiết, học sáng học chiều gì đó,
Giải
em
thích
phải
trên
nói rõ.
kỹ tất cả những gì
Giải
liên
thích
quan.
nó liên quan tới research context và how much time was spent on peer feedback. Phải nói cái này mới được. Và cô tưởng là khi các em peer feedback thì thầy cô đều có mặt hết. Thì em phải nói rõ là how much time trong cái trọng số của môn học.
Massive.
Phải nói rõ thầy cô yêu cầu như thế nào và mỗi tuần mỗi làm hay thế nào. Cái ước lượng được tương đối. Okay, suggestion number 2. Mr. Kang already mentioned that, so you need to have a table, a better, a more beautiful table for demographic information, and also include the age of the participants. And I think just one table is enough for gender and for. You have 2 tables, and it's too ugly. I have to say. Trang bao nhiêu đó nha, 116. Nha. Những cái thông tin như percent, valid, rồi cumulative percent là cái gì không cần thiết. Các em chỉ cần cho cô biết là bao nhiêu mail này, cô có gợi ý cái bảng cho em sửa này. Nha. Number bao nhiêu, male bao nhiêu, female bao nhiêu, tuổi bao nhiêu, rồi total bao nhiêu của 3 nhóm đó. Một bữa ăn, một bữa
Chọn lựa thông tin trình bày.
cái table này không có đẹp, khó xem lắm. And then on page 18. Okay, so here in the data analysis, you need to make clear, you need to state right here clearly that the analysis was descriptive. Here in the data analysis, you have to say that data were analyzed using descriptive statistics. Trong trang 18 em, trong phần phân tích số liệu em phải nói rõ luôn là em phân tích bằng phương pháp gì. Và phương pháp của em là chỉ có cái descriptive statistics thôi, thì em phải nói rõ cái đó càng ngày đều phân tích ở chỗ đó nha. Trang 7 đi, page 7. Trang 7 trên trang 7 phần hả? Cái trang 7 phần trên này nè ha, cái phần trên cái số 2.2 đó, em nói là gì? In this study, translation gì đó ha. They use peer feedback in the classes as a method to correct translation mistakes and produce the most appropriate translation. Nhưng mà em phải làm sao lồng ghép được chữ Google Docs lên đây mới được. Tại vì đề tài của em nó có chữ Google Docs mà, phải không? Mà đó là cũng chưa nói cái chuyện Google Docs hay là feedback nữa, hai việc khác nhau đó. Tựa nó hơi on the hai thứ. Là em đang đánh giá cái feedback thôi hay là đánh giá cái Google Docs. Nhưng mà thôi em đang nói cho nó tương đồng với cái tựa của em á, thì cái chỗ này em phải nói là the classes mà on Google Docs gì đó, phải thêm cái thông tin Google Docs vô. Trang 17 em có 6 cái cluster trong cái questionnaire của em, thì thực sự á cô thấy cái questionnaire của em là làm tốt ở cái chỗ là em có thêm câu số 7, câu số 14, câu số 21, em kêu người ta cho thêm thông tin. Nhưng mà em gọi đó là một cái cluster và nó chỉ có một item thì nó không đúng. Nhìn như cái bảng này, một cái cluster ít nhất phải 3 item, cho nên chỗ này em có thể lọc nó ra đi số 7, số 14 và số 21 đó, em cho nó qua cái phần khác đi, cái phần ý kiến. Phần đó lấy thêm thông tin đúng không?
Dạ.
Phần đó thì hay á, và em cũng you were lucky to get a lot of information for those three items. But you cannot put it here in the question. Cuối cùng cô đồng ý thì Khang là cái phần mà reverse thì hồi nãy đó thì Khang nói đó, thì rõ ràng là trong cái trang số 10, trang số 30, trang 23 đó em nói là 3.12 là agree thì không phải, nó chỉ là neutral thôi, phải không? Em 3.12 tôi thấy ở trang 23 đó các cái biên mà 3.12 và 3.02 thì thực ra này mà nếu mình so với trang 19, mình so với cái range ở trang 19 á,
Là neutral.
và nó chỉ là neutral thôi,
Neutral.
Dạ, neutral.
chứ không phải là agree. Cho nên cái chỗ đó em về cân nhắc cái diễn đạt sao cho nó
Phù hợp.
Cho nó không khó khăn.
cho nó phù hợp hơn. Ở trang 23 á em. Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you.
Congratulations and thank you